So, all right, let's get started tonight. So we're going to be in the book of Daniel tonight, and this is exciting for me because Daniel it's a great book. It's amazing. Um, there are many people who hold Daniel to be their favorite book in all of the Bible. And, we're New Testament Christians. So, you've got Romans, you've got the Gospel of John, you've got the letters of Paul, the book of James, Revelation, the book, there's so much in the New Testament. And then in the Old Testament, you've got Psalms and Genesis and Isaiah and so many books in the Old Testament. And I'm going to sneeze. I can feel it coming, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I know it's going to pop out here any minute now. But Daniel, man, just the content, the stories that are in there, the incredible faith that Daniel had and what it teaches us. It's really quite remarkable. So we're going to enjoy going through there. And Daniel is remarkable in this aspect. He writes about 6 empires. He writes about the Babylonian Empire, of which he was a witness. He was taken captive by the Babylonians, but they were defeated by the Medo-Persians, and he writes about their empire. That was followed by the Greek Empire. He writes about the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire, which was to follow that. And you and I really technically are still living in the Roman Empire. If you think about it, the Roman Empire, it's not a political military empire, but it's a church now. The Roman Church is in some ways an empire in the power and control it has over much of the world. But he also writes about the reign of the Antichrist and then the millennial reign of Jesus. So he writes about 6 empires in the pages that he writes. So I wanted to read this to you. I use the New American Standard Bible, and there's a study Bible that kind of comes along with it that I use. And I like what they say about Daniel. Listen to this. I'm just going to read it and not even make an attempt to mimic it. I'm just going to read what it says. They say, what the skeleton is to the body, Daniel is to prophecy. All the other prophecies in the Old and New Testaments add flesh to Daniel's bones. And if you carefully and thoroughly observe Daniel and discover exactly what the text says, you will find that Daniel's prophecies become increasingly clear and more exciting with every new observation. So in other words, the book of Daniel is the backbone of prophecy. Isaiah is the meat. Isaiah is incredible. Jeremiah is the heart. Ezekiel is the spirit, right? But Daniel is the backbone. And after him, all the minor prophets, they are understood better having read Daniel first. Not necessarily for the historical context, but because Daniel came after many of those minor prophets, but because what Daniel says and does, it just gives meat and flesh to the other prophets. So let's talk about who Daniel was. Daniel was a 15-year-old boy, maybe 10 years old. That there's a question about his age, but most scholars consider him to be a 15-year-old boy when the Babylonians came and took all of the elite intellectuals and other leaders of Jerusalem captive back to Babylon. They emptied Jerusalem of its heart, of its mind, its heart, and its soul. They took all of the elites with them back to Babylon. Daniel and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were a part of that departure, of that captivity. So Daniel was 15 at the time, and the remarkable thing about Daniel is the amount of faith and mature resistance to the indoctrination of the Babylonians because he stood up to that. And we'll see that when we get into the first chapter. I just want to talk about this introductory material first. But his name means God is my judge. Daniel, L-E-L is the name for God. And Dani means my judge. So Daniel means my judge. He was probably of royal heritage, or at least of upper crust nobility. So he was somebody of importance even as a 15-year-old. He was born right around 620 or 625 BC. So we're talking 600 plus years before the time of Jesus. Okay, so we know this because the Babylonian captivity took place in 605 BC. That's when the Babylonians came and first deported the elites of Jerusalem to Babylon. Now, something to understand about Daniel. His prophecies are stunningly accurate. They are incredible and amazingly right on. They hit the nail right on the head. I know I'll share this with you as when we get there, but I know of a very high, not high, but a very popular and well-respected video minister, somebody, you know, who has done a lot of tapes and radio and TV and stuff, broadcasts. He came to know the Lord because of a prophecy of Daniel. He researched that prophecy as a skeptic and ended up saying, there is no way you could know this unless God revealed it to him. And he became not just a believer, but a pastor because of that. So that's what the book of Daniel brings to us. Now, I recall a few years ago, man, it might be a decade ago. It's been a while. I remember it was A&E or the History Channel or one of those documentary stations. They did a 2-hour special on the book of Daniel. And Lori and I thought, well, let's watch it. It's about the book of Daniel. It should be very interesting. The first thing they said is scholars agree that the book of Daniel was written sometime in the middle of the 2nd century BC. Now, that's a fabricated statistic. I live in the scholarly world of Christianity. I've been to seminary. I read books. I watch videos. I talk to other pastors and theologians, and I did a TV show for 10 years answering questions about the Bible. I know something about what I'm talking about. And when somebody says scholars agree that the book of Daniel was written sometime in the 2nd century BC, that's abjectly false. I don't know anybody who believes that. Now, they may. I mean, there may be some friends of mine somewhere. I've probably met pastors who believe that, but I don't know of any. In my circle, nobody believes that. The only reason to believe that is because his prophecy was so accurate that non-believers think that the only way that Daniel's prophecies could be that accurate is if he wrote his book after those things happened. You see the absurdity of that? God is using Daniel to teach us that God sees all. And he reveals that through the book of Daniel. And now people look at Daniel and they go, well, obviously he had to know, he had to live after those events took place, or else he couldn't possibly have known them. It's kind of a cynical circle. But the Dead Sea Scrolls have a copy of the book of Daniel. It's a fragmented copy. It's not a whole copy, but that's been dated back to the 3rd century BC. So already that's a proven fabrication. We have a document from the Dead Sea Scrolls with the book of Daniel that is 100 years earlier than what that guy said in that documentary. So we have to be careful what we watch on these shows. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in an all-seeing, all-knowing God who is capable of doing something like that. So they abjectly lied about that element of the book of Daniel. So Daniel lived in Babylon for the entire captivity, and he never returned back to Jerusalem. As far as we know, he did not have a wife or children. And in fact, it's I'm not going to say it's likely, but it is possible that he was a eunuch. That's very possible because that's how empires and how emperors and kings and monarchs back then controlled their staff. So that's a possibility. But again, that's not recorded for us in Scripture. There's no mention of a wife. Ezekiel mentions his wife. Jeremiah, their personal details are told to us, but Daniel, we don't hear anything about any family, and most of the story is told as if there were no family. So we don't know that for sure. But he never returned with the exiles after the captivity. He stayed where he was. We don't know if it was because of his advanced age. They were there for 70 years. If he was 15 when he was first taken there, he would have been 85 years old. That's a long journey back to your home to rebuild, because the city of Jerusalem was in ruins at the time. So he stayed behind, and we don't hear from him anymore after the book of Daniel. We don't know what happened to him afterwards. Probably died a peaceful, honorable death among the Medo-Persians, but we don't know any of that for sure. He witnessed the fall of his own nation of Judah while he lived in Jerusalem. Then he witnessed the fall of the Babylonian Empire to the Persians, and prophesied to the Persians about the fall that they would have to the Greek Empire. So he was in the middle of all of that. While he was in Babylon, he served under 4 different rulers. Nebuchadnezzar was the ruler when he was first taken captive. Belshazzar was the following ruler after that. Then in the Median Persian, we call it the Medo-Persian Empire, it was Darius the Mede, and then Cyrus the Great of Persia. So he served under all 4 of those monarchs for a varying amount of time. As a young man, his faith was severely tested from the very start. And that's what we're going to talk about next Monday. This is a Thursday, so we're going to leave the introductory material here, and then we'll come back Thursday, and we'll talk about that. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, we're not going to zip through the book of Daniel. There's so much here. I do want to carry it through till at least Christmas, because there's some really interesting Christmas material in here. When we talk about dating the time, I'm writing my daily devotionals right now about when was Jesus born, what day and month was he born, what year was he born in, Why was Bethlehem chosen? You know, I'm going to do a series, a 4-part series on the hymn, the Christmas carol, We Three Kings. You know, how many of them were there? You know, they weren't kings, so what were they? Didn't come from the Orient, so where did they come from? And what's with the gifts, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh? We're going to talk about the 4 of those things. And Daniel really has an important detail on by which we determine when Jesus was born. Very interesting stuff. You'll like that when we get to it, when he talks about his 70 weeks, the 62 weeks, and then the 69 weeks and whatnot. So, all right. So we're going to leave it here tonight. That's it for tonight. So make sure you join us tomorrow night. If you have questions or something that you want to share, send it to me over the next day, and we'll come back tomorrow night and we will talk about those. But for now, that's it for this evening. Introduction to the book of Daniel, written probably in the 6th century BC. He probably like 536, I think, BC is the last we hear of Daniel, and it was probably his prophecies were probably compiled by Ezra, who had returned back to the kingdom of Jerusalem, or the city of Jerusalem. So that's what we're looking at time-wise. So, all right, everybody, that's it for tonight. God bless each and every one of you. I appreciate you all. Pray for those who are missing tonight, and we will see you next time on Digging Deeper Daily. God bless.